If you like this podcast or the previous ones, please consider buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Frankie'sPod. It just goes to help fund the software and the hosting. Hi, welcome back to the episode. I'll start that one again. Hi, welcome back to the podcast. In this episode, I'm talking to Sammy. Sammy served with the RLC and he joined in 1995. Hi, Sammy, how are you doing?
Hi, how you doing, my friend? Pleased to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for coming on. Honestly, it's I really appreciate it when people agree to come on, especially people who I don't know. You know, it's most of the people who listen to this are guys I served with and stuff like that, and it's lovely to get another aspect of the army, not just the artillery type of thing.
Yeah.
So it's just the normal questions like we discussed before we started recording. If you just want to give us where you grew up and why you joined the army.
All right. So I grew up in Glasgow from 70s all the way through to the 90s. At that time, as you know, Glasgow was classed as one of the most dangerous cities in Europe, if not the most dangerous city in Europe. And I grew up in an area where it was all about religion and football, and everybody was literally killing everybody for the slightest little thing. You know, I'd been stabbed myself quite a few times just for being in the wrong area. It was crazy. It really was. And then I started getting involved with the wrong crowd and things just got ridiculous. It was the case of I had to get out here or else I wasn't going to ever get out there. Most likely ended up in a coffin or something. Like a lot of folks, to be honest, it was really bad back then. Also, just before I did join the army in 95, I'd settled down with this girl. We had a kid together, and we ended up splitting up. But still, I had a son. There was no jobs going in Glasgow at the time. There was literally nothing, and I just came across the careers office, and I thought back to when I was a kid, because when I was a kid, I grew up. I loved the old Commando magazines, the old comics. You used to get the little miniature one. I literally bought them like religiously every week, and I always wanted to know what it was like in the armed forces. I always had a fascination with the armed forces, particularly the army, and I just decided between the fascination of wanting to be in and the fact that there was the desire to get the hell out of Glasgow, I just went into the recruitment office, and that's when I did my inquiry and did my tests. And next thing you know, literally a week later, I was on my way to Aldershot. November 5th, 1995 was the day I got there.
That's a quick turnaround, that one, isn't it?
Tell me about it. I loved it. I absolutely loved training. I was a fit lad. I did a lot of fitness before I joined. I did boxing, martial arts. I did lots of athletics and weightlifting and stuff like that. So I kept myself fit. So phase one training itself was a doddle for me. Even the screaming and whatnot, everything else, I enjoyed it. It was great fun for me, you know. But from there, obviously, as you said, I joined the RLC. I was a chef, or some of us would know, the slop jock. But I was one of those chefs that I was quite a temperamental chef. I was like the Gordon Ramsay in the British Army. I was a bit of a grumpy toe rag. And my first posting after doing all the training was back to Purbright. In fact, it was Elizabeth Barracks, and it was with the Black Watch. They were there for a little while, and then the Irish Guards and then the Grenadier Guards come up after that. And then my 18-year career just spiraled from there. Mostly infantry regiments, few, I won't say, so quite a list because we moved around quite a lot in the RLC.
Yeah, you did, didn't you? Yeah, you moved quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it all depends because if your skills are needed elsewhere, then they'll post you out. So you could be there for literally a year and next thing you know, you're posted out, or you could do your 3 years. And in my case, I got moved around a lot. So I was with the RMPs and Catterick, 150 RMP, Like I said, I was with a lot of the Guards regiments at the time as well, beforehand. And then you've got, oh Christ, there's a bloody list now. So my last regiment was Royal Scots. No, it wasn't. It was Highlanders. 4th Scots Highland Regiment was the last regiment I served with. Also served with the medics in Aldershot. I served with Gurkha regiments, but that was mostly as a detachment, overseas on tour. That was in Bosnia. I'm trying to think who else. 2-6 and 3-2 engineer regiments I served with. One was in Germany, one was back in the UK at the time. But 2-6 was only for a short time. I served with the Boys and Royals, Household Cavalry. And there was a few other regiments. But yeah, I got around a heck of a lot. Other than that, that took me up until 2013 when I got made redundant and my name came out of the hat. I was with 4 Scots at the time and they decided to send me back to the UK for the last 6 months where I served with the medics, like I said. That was an Aldershot, and then that was it. 2013, I got made redundant and I was gone.
So how did that make you feel when you got picked for redundancy?
Truthfully, I kind of, at first, I felt like I had a kick in the balls.
Yeah.
I really did. But as the day had gone by, I had realised that the British Army was not the army that I joined. And I didn't like the direction that it was going in. Now, I know they always say people with long in the tooth, you know, you've had your time when you were younger. Obviously, the army's going to change. But I really didn't like the direction that the army was going in with certain things, particularly when it came to bringing in civilian contractors into the army. And I found that civilian contractors getting involved felt like they had a say with military personnel. And to that end, I was kind of glad that I had been made redundant by the end of the day. I said to myself, enough is enough. I'm done. Also, old injuries were playing up, you know, the knees, the back, the usual thing. And between the fact that I'd moved around a lot, I could see that it was affecting my family a lot, especially my kids. Because they couldn't.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah. I mean, my kids could never settle down anywhere. They struggled to make friends because we were always on the move, and that affects their mental health. And then obviously there's my wife as well. I mean, it massively affected my wife's mental health with the constant move, because whenever she managed to settle down, redo the house all over again, spending God knows how much money, decorating your house, and then trying your best to make friends, which can be difficult, especially if you're attached, because when you go to an infantry regiment, say, they all know each other, and they have done for 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
So
it's very cliquey,
Yeah, I mean, they can be, and understandably, they've been together, they've been through a lot together, and I absolutely respect that, and we all did. You know, and some of them are very forthcoming, you know, hi, how are you, welcome to the regiment. And then there's others that are like, they just don't want to know you. And again, that's their right, that's not a problem, we're there to do a job. But for dependents like your wife or husband, whatever, it can be difficult. And I'm glad for them that I got picked to leave. And so, yeah, we just move forward from now.
I know, to go on, just circling back a bit, where you're on about where the civic contractors come in.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember, you know, when I was a young singly and stuff like that, always whinging about, you know, fucking money's gone out of my wages for the cookhouse.
Oh, yeah.
For you know, and I hardly ever go there. You know, I mean, I did. I went there every bloody meal.
Yeah.
You know, so then, you know, the ideas of pay as you dine seemed great. I think pay as you dine was one of the biggest failures that happened in the military.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I wouldn't say it was badly implemented. It was just, well, it fucking was. It was.
It was. They got the lowest bidder that offered the army the highest amount of money. That's what it was. They came in and basically said, we will invest X, Y, and Z amount of money into you. You don't have to pay a single penny to the army. We'll give you all of this and do this, that, and everything. And you don't have to worry about anything. We'll take care of everything afterwards. And the army's like, great, we're saving money. Yeah, why not? And it was a complete tits up.
I mean, I don't know if you feel the same. Obviously, you were cooking this stuff, but I thought the quality changed. You know, it went downhill. People started skipping meals because they thought, we'll save money and all that. I mean, I know in the last regiment I was in, the Bonco had the Audley NCO of the battery. He literally had a 50 quid float for people who were skint, so they could go to the cookhouse and get something to eat.
Well,
Because you know what it's like, fucking young lads.
Hell yes,
They're all skint by the third of the month, like type thing. Yeah.
We've all been there.
If you're a young lad in the army and you're not into your overdraft halfway through the month, you're not enjoying yourself enough.
It's usually after the first week you've been paid, you're absolutely spent, you spent it on whoever and then whatever. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I'll be honest with you, when it comes to Pagerdyne, I think it's diabolical. It's a scam. That's what it is. They're robbing the military personnel of everything that they can get, stupid prices, for absolute vile, diseased. It's just disgusting, honestly. So when it was implemented, we had garrison RSMs within the RLC and officers who were going around all the regiments, and specifically they were only interested in talking to the chefs, and they were saying, you don't have an opinion, you never will have an opinion. If you raise any concerns, you'll be disciplined, and if you continue to raise any concerns, you'll disappear. You'll be gone out of the army. So, in other words, what they tell you, you will do, and you'll shut your mouth. Now, if the civic company has a problem with you, you'll be gone. You'll be disciplined. They are basically, officially and unofficially, they are your new employers. In other words, because they're the ones who've brought all the money in. They're the ones who will now tell you what to do. So you follow everything that they say religiously, or else you'll get disciplined. And it will be done through the military. So if you balls up through them, you will be dealt with through the army. And that happened. I seen guys and girls who fought it, and they all got told, goodbye, you're gone, service is no longer required. Because the standards of the food was absolutely disgusting. I myself fought against it, but it was just before I got made redundant. And I fought it tooth and nail, because when I saw I was having to stand there and stand in front of guys and girls coming in and looking at that like, what the heck is this? Why are you even serving us to us? I had to stand there, and it was almost as if we were told, this is what you have to say, this is your response. And I'm like, why would I want to say that to the guys and girls who I work with? Because I was like, no, I'm not doing this. When they were like, if you don't do it, you'll be gone. It's as simple as that. You, your family, we'll just get rid of you. We'll just get somebody else in. We'll get somebody else younger, offer them a promotion, and tell them, you get this promotion on the basis that this is what you say and do. And they'll take it. I was like, that's painful.
No, I mean, luckily, I say luckily, I mean, I was married when it came in, so the only times I had ever dealings with it was when I was on duty or we were away or anything like that, So, but it was just. Some of the lads in my last regiment who used to knock about with were chefs, and they hated it. They absolutely hated it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've always said, even to the lads then, my mates then, I think the hardest job, or one of the hardest jobs in the military, is a chef's job.
Yeah.
And not like it's the hardest course because no fucker passes it. I had to squeeze that in. Sorry, I had to. I think it was one of the hardest jobs because they're up dead early. If you're prepping breakfast and all that, you're in there like 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever, or sometimes earlier.
Yeah, you're up at about 4 and you're finishing at dark o'clock at night. But would you make a good reputation with the guys and girls in the regiment? You become a part of the family. You're not just a chef or a slop jock or whatever. You might be at first, but once they get to know you, especially when you're out in the field, they really get to know you because they know that with this guy or girl, they're not just there doing that. They're out there humping and dumping with us. They're out there with their gear on. They're out there doing what we need. They're encouraging themselves and their other guys to get in amongst with us, showing an interest in what our regiment does, and they're wanting to
Yeah.
participate in everything else, which is what we did. I know my generation at least did anyway. You know, I still would have what things are like nowadays. I don't know, but yeah,
I mean,
go on.
for one of the, I mean, I was out on exercise, fucking hell, on tour in '95 in Bosnia, and we were waiting for a med section. We were attached to 19 Regiment when they were up on Mount Igman, and because our med section grew in size, we had loads of new drivers brought in, new medics and stuff like that. Because we were expecting really bad shit to happen in that, because we were changing from the UN to NATO forces, and we were started shelling the Serbs and stuff like that. So we were expecting lots of, casualties and stuff like that. Luckily, it didn't happen. We only had a couple, but so we ended up with quite a big section, and they sent us a chef up. Brilliant lad. He just Brown, his last name was. We just call him Chubby Brown. He's always one of the chefs. He used to be in 3 Hour Chair with us when I was there as well. I bumped into him years later after he got out when he was doing hospitality somewhere. But I mean, he was just. It was to show. I want to mention this because the professionalism. We'd always used to take the piss out of the slop jockey, the fucking whatever, and all that. But you could fucking cook. You know what I mean? He'd just be given rations, and we would have lovely meals when he cooked stuff like that, just from rations.
Yeah, I mean, you always get your platoon clown, which is the local village idiot. Every regiment has that, especially within the catering corps. But a vast majority of us, we're not just there to obviously do a great job of cooking. We're also there as another means. Like before we were talking about when you're doing your job, sometimes you find yourself being a bit of a counsellor. Believe it or not, It's actually the same when you're a chef. You're standing on a hot plate, you know all the news of what's going on within your regiment or your battalion, whatever. You know everything because everybody tells you everything. Because it's one of the things of, if you ever want anybody to stay on your side, keep a chef on your side. Keep this person on your side. Well, we knew also the bad stuff that went on. And so we were there for whoever, when they came through, to talk to them. How's things? How are you? What's happening? Do you need anything? Anytime you want me to come see you, mate, just give me a shout. Do you fancy going for a beer tonight? It was all of that. That's what we did. We were always there for anybody that needed us because the regiments, the battalions, the squadrons, whatever, that was our family. That was our home. Whether it's for a year or 3 years, whatever, that was our home. So everybody there was part of our family, and it was our job to make sure they were all not just fed, but they ever had other needs taken care of. Mental health.
You've just reminded me of something. You've just reminded me of something there. When I first got my unit, my adult unit, the full screw who was looking after us, that was like one of the first things he said to us. He goes, "Never piss off a chef. Never piss off the pay corps, and never piss off the battery clerk, because you'll not get fed, you'll not get paid, and you won't go on leave."
Or you'll find something in your rations when you're in the field. Which, by the way, I actually saw one person doing, and he got the consequences of it later on. But that's another story. And it involved. Do you remember the little container boxes you used to get the lid on? You'd either get your
Norwegian eggs.
Yeah, where some people used to put a bin bag in it and use it for a toilet if it was an old broken one. Well, this guy was serving with a particular guard regiment who he'd upset with and decided not to put a bin bag in it, and relieved himself in there. The guys found out about it. Yeah, the guys found out about it and dealt with him later on. But I was shocked to see that.
This tastes a bit nutty.
Yeah, tell me about it. But yeah, I witnessed what happened to him afterwards, and I was like, I will never do that. Never. I would never do that.
So, out of all the regiments you served with, which was the worst and which was the best, and why?
Oh, crikey. So, I've got to be honest, when I say the worst regiment I served with was the Grenadier Guards. And it had nothing to do with the junior ranks. It was the officers. I
Yeah.
have never in my life met a worst beggar bunch of snobs ever. You know, they look down to everybody else like they are dirt, and they speak to you like dirt, and it's not just attached personnel, it is everybody. I mean, I just could not, I have never met anybody like it ever. The Grenadier Guards by far for me, and again, it's not the junior ranks. I have a lot of good friends who served who served in the Guards, who are Grenadier Guards, and absolutely fantastic guys. It was the officers. Couldn't stand them. Absolutely hated them. Now, as for my most favourite regiment, Four Scots. Four Scots are absolute a bunch of legends. I've never met a more heartwarming, welcoming bunch of absolute psychotic nut jobs in all my life. They
I've
are
heard that.
absolutely, they are so friendly, they're so caring, you know, they're like just mental beyond all recognition. And I'm sure there's other regiments that are just as bad, if not just as mad. And they do take care of you. I found that they took care of everybody. They treated everybody like a family and made everybody feel welcome. And everybody worked well. And they also realised that people are human beings and make mistakes, you know, and
Yeah.
they work with people that make mistakes and help them get through it and help people to move forward. So yeah, that was my regiments. Grenadier Guards, by far the worst. Four Scots Highland Regiment, absolute favourites.
It's funny that because I interviewed a lass who used to be in the artillery but transferred to the AGC, and their last tour of duty before she got MD'd was with Scots, and she said more or less the same. She didn't want to leave them, and
Yeah.
said it was just like one massive family.
Yeah, when I got made redundant, I was actually thinking about transferring over to Four Scots. They even asked me, instead of leaving, Sammy, how about you transfer over to us? I was like, I'm a bit too old to do anything infantry. They're like, well, get you an MT.
Yeah.
No, I'm taking the money, I'm running, guys. My wife told me, you know, it's time for me to
Yeah.
go now. She's already spent the
Yeah,
money,
it's
I
like
haven't
that
got it yet.
the lure of that handout and a pension.
Yeah, well, it was my wife. She saw how much I was getting, and she was like, that money's already spent, and you don't even realise it. I had to take the money and run. Yeah, it was my time to go. So that was it. You know, I wasn't a young lad anymore. I just couldn't keep up with the fitness. I had too many problems with my knees and my back. So yeah, I took the
Yeah.
money, ran like a little bitch.
So how did you find the transition from military to civilian life then?
Oh,
Because I
bit of
mean,
a
8
mixture.
years is still quite quite a time in uniform.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a mixture. At first, I was like cocksure myself because obviously being a chef, you've got a trade, you know.
Yeah.
The biggest hit for me really was the drop in salary, and it was basically doing the same kind of hours, if not more. So I was on just shy of 37,000 when I was in the army, and when I went to do an even higher position in Civvy Street, where I was the boss in theory, I dropped all the way down to just shy of 19 grand a year as a starting salary,
Wow.
where I moved to, and I was working near enough 60 odd hours a week at least. And I never got to see my family. And for a couple of years, I continued doing that, until everything just hit me at once. And I kind of just basically had a bit of a meltdown after that. And I ended up having to give up my job. I just like, I can't do this no more. I quit. And then my mental health just took a bit of a deterioration. And I had to focus on my mental health and my physical health.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
took a couple of years out. But yeah, I struggled a lot with communication. I still had that urge to, you know, have that banter that you have in the
Yeah.
armed forces. But civvies just didn't get it because I had no veterans working with me. None of the folk that I worked with had ever served or had any family that had ever served. So they considered me as being rude, direct, abrupt. all the usual kind of things. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's the good things about me. You should really see the bad stuff. And they really didn't like that either. And again, after a while, you started feeling that you were the outsider. And because you were the outsider, you started feeling like you weren't welcome. At least I didn't. I felt like I wasn't welcome. And because of that, I started feeling, is this really what I want to be doing in my life?
Yeah.
Like this shit. And I started feeling the urge to look for contract jobs overseas as a contractor. I was like, you know what? I just don't care. I just want to get away. Anywhere, I don't care. Iraq, I had the opportunity to go, but things kicked off at the last minute. And obviously, all contractors at the time, at least with the company I was looking at, and I can't even remember the name of them, didn't go through. And as like I said, my mental health just took a turn for the worse, and my physical health took a turn for the worse, and my little castle came crumbling down pretty bloody quickly. And I had a 6-year window where I was having to recover during that time.
Wow.
Yeah. But I learned a lot during them 6 years about myself, my capabilities, other people, nature's good nature and bad, and where I was looking at going in the future from there. I also learned I needed to tone it down a little bit because I was very direct. People
Yeah.
are, civvies are not army orientated. They just want to get on with life. There's a lot of two-faced backstabbing people out there, and you can't always trust every single person that you meet, and I learned that the hard way.
I mean, I've been quite lucky that I'm still with the same firm that I joined when I left the military, and it was a good bunch of people. But initially, I think they found me a bit direct, loud, obstinate type of thing. But because for example, if I was given a job, I'd do it.
Yeah.
I'd do it there and then.
Yeah. Yeah.
And expect it to be, I'll give a job, do it there and then. Oh, well, you've rushed into that, done it. Yeah, but it needed doing it. You wanted it doing, so it's done. Oh, you could have took your time and, yeah, but it's done. No, we have to take our time because there's other things to do. No, you give me a job, I'll do it. But the flip side of that is, and I kind of still do sometimes, I'm better than I was, but if I ask somebody to do something or tell them to do it, I expect it to be done there and then. And sometimes I get frustrated in myself when I ask people to do things and it's not done straight away or done in any time frame, type of thing. I find myself getting frustrated, and it's not their fault; it's my fault.
Yep.
I should be more accepting for that. And if the young lad who works with us is listening to this, I'm sorry. But I found that. I also, like you say about being the banter side of things. And again, with the lads and lasses I was working with, that was fine. They didn't mind. They found it quite funny. But it was with some of the customers that we had. The customers we've had for many years that who know me know what my sense of humour type of things quite like. But some of them, and I didn't realise that I was kind of being, I wouldn't say scary to people, but a bit, they found me a bit intimidating. And especially the way I talked and stuff like that. But it's just the way you can't change overnight, type of thing.
No,
I interviewed a couple of weeks back, and his came out last weekend and released it early. And he was talking about he runs a security firm, so he's got a lot of ex-military there and stuff like that. But a majority of them aren't ex-military, and he's not really after ex-military coming because sometimes they're a hindrance, and he explained why. But one of the guys who he has was in the army for 34 years, and he has to keep reining him in. And it's not all wokeness and stuff like that. It's just said you can't say that to people. You can't do that. And the way he said it goes, if the thought process is up here, just stop it before it comes out of your mouth, or put it somewhere else until that bit's over, type of thing. So as much as we say as veterans and that, saying, all the banter and blah blah blah, we're not in the army anymore. We have to like tone it down.
I found that I had to have two personalities. One for veterans and people that are still serving, and the other one for normal day-to-day activities like my neighbours, people I meet on the street, and obviously where I'm working as well, because there's a whole two different worlds there. And
Yeah.
one's like the dark and giddy kind of side, and the other one's the straightforward, smooth talking, kind of easy kind of going guy, who's very political in their sense, whatever that may be at the time and whenever it changes. And yeah, like you said, for me, I really had to tone it down very quickly. But I hadn't noticed that until after I got sick. Because I got resentful, to be honest. I was like, who the hell do you think you are? But
Yeah.
again,
I've
after,
seen that in a lot of people.
yeah, exactly. It wasn't until when I was sick, I was like, well, they don't come from my world just as much as I haven't been in their world. So, you're going to have clashes between the worlds. And, well, this is my world now. So I'm the
Yeah.
one that had to change, not them.
So if we can touch on your mental health aspect, how did you find that you were starting to suffer? Did other people point anything out, or was it yourself?
I suppose you could say it was a bit of both. I found I was losing my temper. To start off with, I found myself losing my temper a lot quicker. I was getting really snappy, judgmental, mumbling to myself a lot more, the usual, the fuck you think you are? I'll punch your face and stuff like that, under your breath. And people start to notice, they're like, sorry, what was that? And you'd be like, oh, nothing. Well, just leave it. And then I started noticing that I was drinking more and more and more and more, then more. And my behaviour became more erratic, to the point where I was doing stuff that I wouldn't normally do. Almost like I was planning on dealing with somebody, like I'm going to punch this guy's face in. I'm just going to go knock on her door, or I'm just going to give them the beating of their life. I'm just going to snap their neck. You fantasise about it.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, wait a minute, what the hell am I doing here? What's going on? You start arguing with yourself. It's almost as if one part of you is like, well, mate, listen, there's a problem here. You shouldn't be thinking like that. And then the other part's like screaming, God, shut the fuck up. I'm going to do it, And again, because I was kind of like this, and I wasn't the smiley, happy kind of going guy that got on with everybody, even the old rude jokes, that kind of stuff. People started noticing that change in my behaviour quite quickly. And it was probably within about 6 months or so. And then the few months after that, it kind of pacing things up a little bit. And that was when my wife was like, we need to see a doctor because you are not right. There's something wrong here. I refused it because, as always, you deny it. You deny there's a problem.
Yeah.
No, I'm all right. It's fucking everybody else. It's not me. I'm not the problem. It's them dicks. They're the ones that are the problem, but I'll deal with that. I'll deal with that problem soon enough, and then everything will go back to normal. But it didn't. I was the problem. It wasn't everybody else. It was me. I got the help in the end, but it was through doctors who didn't have a clue what they were talking about. They were reading from a script, a script that they've done again and again and again. And for the very few people, it may have worked, but for the vast majority, it didn't. And I was one of those vast majority that it didn't work. And so my mental health deteriorated even more to the point where I was starting to get physical with people. There'd been alterations where between myself and others, they ended up at the worst end of the stick. I could have got myself in a lot of trouble, but through the grace of their goodness, I didn't. And that's when I decided.
I suppose when people, sorry, go on.
I was saying it was at that time when I decided that I needed to see if there was anything to relate to the armed forces in my area, and that's when I found a charity which basically got in contact with me as well because somebody else had spoke to them on behalf of me behind my back, and they contacted me just at the same point where I was trying to reach out to them, and it was through that. It was actually a veteran who was appointed my, let's say, carer, but actually worked with me. He was a guy who'd served. I'm pretty if I remember, he was ex-para and he served in the Falklands in '82 when it all kicked off. and he himself had PTSD, but it was through combat. I've seen stuff when I was in the armed forces, but I'd also had a lot of stuff happen to me before the armed forces, and as well as during my career in the army, but nothing to do with the army. So I had like a mixture of PTSD from various other things. But this guy, he had combat PTSD, so we got talking, and he was the one that helped get me back on my toes within a couple of years, because it was a very slow process for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting that you say that you found you had PTSD, and it was a mixture of lots of things, like, and stuff that happened to you beforehand and all that. And guys I've spoke to on here have said exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
That it's not so that it's the PTSDs or the mental health issues they've had when they've left.
Yeah.
They probably had while they were in the army as well. But you just kind of, it's glossed over type of thing, especially people of our age and all that, and a bit older. But a lot of them it's been identified when they've been going through counselling and stuff like that it wasn't just the army that caused it. It was outside influences either before the army, like family and stuff like that. I mean, I've had some guys tell me some horrific stuff that quite shocked us. And other guys the army's, they had such bad lives before the military that when they joined the military become their family.
Yeah.
And then when they've left, they've got nothing. And it's not because they've left the army, it's because they've got no family anymore.
Yeah.
Because they never had one to go back to.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, if it makes sense.
Absolutely understandable. Yeah.
And it affects people in many different ways.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I've just about finished my degree in psychology, and you do find that post-traumatic stress, it can arise not just from one event, it could be a multiple array of events. And you'll genuinely find that veterans, even people still serving, their trauma generally stems from multiple events,
Yeah.
and a lot of it tends to come from when they're younger, which is one of the reasons why when you go to see your counsellors, they're always asking you, let's talk about your childhood, how did you get on with your parents, stuff like that, because it could be the smallest thing or it could be something that's actually terribly happened to you. In my case, I was neglected and I had a lot of other things happen to me. I was beaten to a pulp. My mother had tried to murder me a couple of times when I was really young. My family just got rid of me and left me, to fend for myself. And I was taken in by a local family. And then my family ended up taking me back, and I was just basically tortured as a child, psychologically and physically. I was physically tortured and beaten with whips, and I couldn't wait to join the armed forces. I couldn't wait, but like I said,
I interviewed a guy the other week. I'm giggling about this, but it was just the way he said it. He says, "Right, I want to talk to you, and it's going to be a sad story."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Right, okay." And much like yourself, we've never met each other. I don't know what your story. That's the way I like to do these podcasts. People have asked us, said, like, do you do a script and stuff like that? Send them questions and everything like that. No, it's just you react as I have to react to what you're saying.
Yeah.
And his opening line was, like I said to you, what was it like growing up? And he was like, well, my dad used to snap me or break my fingers every time he thought I was lying. And I was like, what? I was like, fucking hell. I was like, yeah. And I was, because, and as I explained to him, I came, I had a great childhood. I can't whinge about anything at all. I was the youngest of 5. I count then, freaking hell, getting old. I was the youngest of 5, and there was a big age gap between me and all the others. So I was kind of felt like the spoiled child, which was, I liked it. It was great.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. So I find it not hard to relate to people like who've an upbringing like yourself and stuff like that. But I find it almost doubly shocking that people can treat their own offspring.
Yeah, I mean,
certain ways. It's fucking ridiculous to me. I mean,
yeah, some people just shouldn't be parents. My wife, she's a veteran. She served for a while in the army, and when we got to really know each other, we were talking about my childhood. Now, she was like you. She had an absolute fantastic life as a kid. She was spoilt rotten. She could get away with murder. She could be standing with a dead body next to her and the bloody knife in her hand, and her parents would be like, "No, my daughter would never do this," you know.
Yeah.
But I was, like you said, that guy you'd spoken to, where his father would break his finger for lying. Well, my dad, I don't know if you remember these brushes that you used to. It was like a glove you used to clean your dog with, but they've got needles. They've got needles. Yeah, I used to get slapped across the face like that, full pelt, you know. And my father used to have his friends there as witnesses to say, "Look, my son won't cry." So it was like that. And because of things like that happens, what it did was it had wiped my ability to have any emotions because I was tortured that much as a kid. All emotions were stripped from me. So when I seen things happen older, I had no emotional response because all my emotions had been literally tortured out of me when I was a kid. You know, I wasn't allowed to cry, I wasn't allowed to smile, I wasn't allowed to be happy, I wasn't allowed to be sad, you know, I wasn't allowed to be angry. In fact, the only emotion I was allowed to be was anger because he wanted me to be an animal, and because I was treated like an animal. But that was it. There was nothing else. And it was a woman that taught me how to be a human being again, you know. She showed me her compassion, her empathy, and it took me a long time because it was almost as if she had married an animal. She had only just realised for the first time, this guy doesn't know how to talk about their emotions. This guy doesn't know how to open up about anything. He doesn't understand. She noticed that I wouldn't react to anything at all, whatsoever, apart from one emotion, anger. That was it. So it took me a while to learn how to be somebody that understood emotions. Because let's be honest, as blokes as well, in general terms, you don't get to understand your emotions because you're taught not how to. But in my case, it was beaten out of me completely. Just learn how to be angry. But I've moved on since then. I'm a different person now. I've grown up. I'm 48 years old. I've learnt a lot in my life. And yeah, a lot of it has been negative, but I've always seen the positive from it. Well, what have I learnt from this? I'm still here. I'm stronger. Well, what can I do with this? Well, I can use it as a tool to help others, because if that happened to me when I was a kid, or if this happened to me during my time in the armed forces, or if this happened to me after I left the armed forces, then I want to use it as a tool to help others, because it's guaranteed to be doing it to others. Other people will go through this. It's not just me. So that's where I started to go, you know what, the world can be a better place. Let's use the bad stuff and turn it into something that can be used for the benefit.
Before we started recording, you spoke about the hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
I mean, that took me a bit back. That I was like, wow. Can you talk about that? How it affected you when it happened to you, or when you received that treatment?
So, the first thing I'll say is clinical hypnotherapy isn't what you think it is. You're not hypnotised to the point where I could say bark like a dog, you know, and stuff like that. That's just stuff that you get on for show. People genuinely go along with it. But the stuff that we were doing it was getting you to a form of like a meditative state. So in other words, clinical hypnotherapy is basically like meditation. Right. You're lying down on your favourite bed or your couch or whatever, getting comfortable, and then we'll talk to you in such a way at a certain pace that helps you to become extremely relaxed. Once you start to feel like you're almost falling asleep and we're still talking to you, we want to keep you at that state, because your subconscious and your consciousness are both, we have access to both. So when your subconscious is conscious, in other words, it's awake, you can start talking about the problems that you've got, whereas consciously you wouldn't, because you're trying to hide it. And so this is what helps to open up about lots of things. You know, we get the honest you, what's really going on. We also get access to things that you've hidden from yourself that you suddenly remember. It could be in the case of an image in your head, something that's just popped up all of a sudden, and we'll start talking about it, because it's also like a talk therapy. Well, let's talk about that. How does it make you feel? What's the first emotion? You know, we go through them channels and we start to realise that a lot of people have got things that they've hid away. We all have that little place in the back of our head where there's that one thing that we just don't want to know. We don't want to think about it, but it's still affecting us. And so the clinical hypnotherapy helps us with that. And I was actually somebody who was received that treatment before I decided to go into it myself. And it was through a lady that we'd spoken to. She actually reached out on a veterans page on Facebook. She was looking for volunteers. She was offering free treatment. My wife says to me, and as I said, my wife's also a veteran. She was like, you know what, it's free. Why don't you just try it? Because I wasn't well myself. I'm going to say I was demented. You know, let's just say I was demented. So I reached out. I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm happy to participate. And she got back to me pretty quickly. She asked me for some details just to confirm that I served. I also asked her for some details because I wanted to know who she was, really. And next thing you know, within a couple of weeks, we were talking face to face, kind of like what we are just now. And she explained what clinical hypnotherapy is. It was something like it was done over like 12 sessions. And in theory, it's talk therapy. It's just that it's done at a level where, like I said, we're talking to your subconscious, but you're consciously aware that we're talking to your subconscious. And what we're doing is we just slow down the pace of which we're talking, and we make it very comfortable so that when you listen to our voices, it makes you very, very relaxed. Because then you open up and we move on from there. So I took the treatment, and I was a skeptic. I'll be honest, I was like, this bullshit ain't going to work. But I'm at the point where I just want to try anything. But it did. It made me feel very comfortable. I felt relaxed. And I don't know why, but something just came out of my mouth and a memory just flashed. And I just said this memory. It was a sudden flash. It was like a flashcard with a picture on it. It just flashed up from nowhere. And I'll be honest with you, it was something that happened to me when I was a kid. And I told her about it. And straight away, all these emotions came forward. And that's where we started off. We used that as a starting point. And by the end of it, I actually could feel myself feeling a lot better. It worked. It was working. It did work. And so I got to learn more about it. And after several months of going through the process of not just getting the treatment, but also learning more about it myself, I started to actually educate myself about what it was, and she decided to take me on as someone that she wanted to train, which was around about a year. And I went through that, and then I started working with veterans, as well as people from the NHS, which was just as well because by that time, COVID had kicked in. So I was working with a lot of people who worked for the NHS whilst they were going through COVID. My wife, she'd become an NHS nurse. She had literally gone from uni. She just started at work, and then next week, you know, boom, she was in a COVID ward straight away. It just kicked in. She hit the deck running right into COVID. And so I started working with people there. And surprisingly, in the NHS, there's a lot of veterans. So it was kind of like
as I've discovered,
Yeah, I mean, and I always did this for free. I never offered, I never charged anybody, and I never would. And it was the same with the blacksmithing, like I was telling you about, when I entice people into. I'm a self-taught blacksmith, and I'm really good. Got all the gear, and I wanted to teach others how to be blacksmiths. But at the same time, I explained to them that if you ever have any problems, you ever want to talk about it, you know, it's up to yourself if you ever want to talk about it. And 9 times out of 10 they did, so we did talk therapy whilst we're doing the blacksmith lessons. Everybody wants to learn how to make something. 9 times out of 10 they want to make a crazy thing. I want to make a Rambo knife. I want to make a machete. I want to make a Conan Barbarian sword. You're like, no, let's make a pair of pliers or a pair of scissors to start off with. But yeah, that went off, and obviously I got myself into university. did my degree in psychology. And I'm finished. That's me done with that, and I move on in the world.
So you're going to be looking at working for the NHS or privately, or?
I'm going to be working privately because unfortunately the way things are going at the minute, trying to get into the world of psychology is a very selective world. If your face don't fit, you ain't getting in. So
Right.
the private sector is more of a better sector. At the minute, I work with a lot of people that have physical and psychological needs. You know, people that have disabilities or have severe mental health problems. So I work with them. And surprise, surprise, I work with people that suffer from severe trauma. They've had a history of trauma. So I am literally where I should be, or at least where I'm definitely needed at the moment. And that's where I am.
Strange question, or might not be strange. You tell me, you're a psychologist. So when you're treating someone or helping them, can that not bring up stuff from you as well? Like, do you feel yourself, or can you detach yourself completely from their story? You know what I mean? I mean, I'm explaining that correctly. I don't know.
You have to protect yourself first and foremost. So you have to start off by planning in advance, understanding that you could end up speaking to somebody that has gone through some, if not the most horrific things ever. You could also speak to somebody who's gone through exactly what you've gone through, and it could bring everything flooding back. So you've got to prepare yourself beforehand. What I also do afterwards as well is I talk about how I feel, to somebody else. I won't tell them why I'm feeling like this. I'll just talk to them about how I'm feeling because I need to kind of get this out of my system as well. I also go to the gym. I'll go for a swim, go for walks. You've got to kind of detox yourself because when you're taking this load on, it can become very toxic to you and it will eventually latch onto you. So that's the way I found to do it. Just reach out and speak to somebody else about how you're feeling.
I kind of get what you mean. I mean, this is no comparison to what you do, obviously, for what I do. But I have interviewed people where they've given me their story, and after the recording and stuff like that, and we've moved on, and I'm sat here, and I can't fucking talk. You know what I mean?
No.
I'm like, wow, and it's took 12 hours or more. You know, a couple of stories I've had being told to me, and I've not slept that night.
No.
You know, and it's I get what you're saying, but I wouldn't like to do what you're doing. I
think one of the reasons why I do, and I'm not going to say I'm great at what I do. I just do what I do because I can at the minute. And as long as I can, I'll continue. But the reason why I do it is because I'm sick and tired of seeing people taking their own lives because they feel like there's nobody else out there. The amount of people that we've lost in our community, not just our community, in general, but specifically for the time being, we're talking about our community, the amount of people that we have lost. I've seen too many of people that I know, whether they're my friends, who I've served with, or they've attached to the same regiment and I knew them, and they're no longer around because they're gone. One girl in particular is a friend of my wife and my own friend as well. I actually spoke to her 20 minutes before I did a checkup call. How are you doing, kiddo? How's things? How's life? She got out of the army. Everything was fine. She sounded absolutely great. Everything was going great for her. She had a family. She was moving on in life. There was nothing to suggest or suspect anything. And then 2 days later, I got a call. 20 minutes after I'd spoken to her on the phone, she'd went to the top of the stairs, attached a rope to the railing and hung herself. Her kids came back from school. One of them had a key and got in, and the kids saw the mum. And that hit me hard. I mean, that really hit me hard. And I got angry, not at her. I got angry because she didn't feel like she could talk to anybody, And that hurt me. Not because of her.
Because she
didn't feel like she could talk to anybody. And I thought, I need to be better. I need to be better because All right, I was a slop jock when I was in the army, but I was still in the army. I knew people, I know them all. These people all did different jobs, but we all did this job to get, ourselves moving forward in the world. We all did a job to protect our own people and to protect each other and to protect other people. But we're still human beings at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what bloody job we did. We're still human beings at the end of the day. We should be there to take care of each other. You don't have to be the best kind of smooth talking, I know how to get, into your head or anything like that. You don't have to be anything like that. All you have to do is just say, how are you? I'm Sammy. How's things? What are you up to? How's life? Where you been? What you doing? Get a conversation talking. That's it. Sometimes that's all it takes. But I felt I had to do more. And so that's the reason why I did my own little journey, the blacksmith and the talk therapy, the clinical hypnotherapy, the degree in applied psychology, and I don't know, I'm not going to stop for something else out there that I can do. And if I save just one life, I'm happy. If I can save more, I'm happy. If I can just change somebody else's life, I'm happy. I just don't want to hear that if somebody else gone.
I get it. I totally get it. Since doing this for the last 2.5 months, nearly 3 months, I kind of didn't appreciate. I mean, like yourself, I've lost friends since I've left the army and they've took their own lives. And you kind of go, oh, fucking hell, another one sometime. And I wouldn't say blasé, but you don't appreciate it.
No.
And again, we fall out of touch with people. And sometimes it's hard to cross that bridge and open the door again, to get back in. I kind of suffered it myself. I spent a long time sat in the house and didn't, no reunions, anything like that. Don't want to go back. Don't want to, cut myself off from this, cut myself off from that. And it's kind of helped me doing this podcast. And I've mentioned this in previous ones as well, in bloody hell, nearly every one of them, because there's always in every podcast there's talk of mental health.
Oh yeah.
And that's not because we're trying to bring it up. It's just that it comes to the front that even people who we think are the strongest men in the world and strongest women in the world, something. I spoke to you before we'd done this, and I said I'd met a newly qualified therapist and stuff like that. And the words I said to her, she goes, "Oh yeah, so you do the podcast with our military?" I said, "Yeah, there's one thing I've discovered since doing the podcast." She goes, "What's that?" I says, "We're all fucked." And she just looked at me and went, "Yep,
yeah,
you are." And I was like, "We are. We're all fucked." Whether it's even if it's the slightest little thing, but like you say there, people do need to talk more. And the other thing I've noticed more since doing this is the amount of veterans agencies that are out there, the breakfast clubs and stuff like that. And these are things that are these little organisations that have been set up by people. They're not, the NHS haven't gone, right, put that there, put that there.
Oh yeah,
the
absolutely.
NHS haven't got time.
No.
They haven't got I'm not dissing the NHS, but they haven't, in some places, they haven't got the ability. I've spoke to guys who've said, I've spoke to this therapist and it just wasn't working, and then they put me onto somebody else and somebody else. And I had a podcast about a guy who was getting therapy, and the only people that helped him actually stop taking his own life was going to a therapist that had nothing to do with a military background or anything like that, and just said, look, forget that. Look at it this way, and then took him in a different direction, which was away from the military, away from the veterans.
Yeah.
Keeping in touch with the veterans, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But his thought process was to get away from it. And that's what helped him. And it helped him get back into everything else as well.
Absolutely.
But sometimes you meet a therapist that you can't gel. You've got to have a rapport. You've got to have a bond, I suppose.
Yeah. It's actually it was actually a piece of my thesis that I just recently done. And it was bringing up a couple of things that I wanted to talk about when I was doing my degree. And one was there's a sheer lack of military psychologists serving in the British Armed Forces, and particularly in the British Army, because to date, from what I gathered, there's only 1, 2.
Yeah.
The rest of them are civilians. Well, unless them civilians have served, how can they relate? You know? the other fact as well is, as mental health wise, you're supposed to kind of go to either the padre or the welfare. Well, what qualifications have they got? I mean, it's all right saying that they can talk to you, and that's a good thing. But where do they go from there? Well, they send you to the doctor. And how long is that going to take for you to get in there? When you go to the med centre, you get a biff chit. Well, a biff chit isn't going to sort you out, because you're going to go and sit in your room, or you're going to go home for a few weeks, and you're just going to keep quiet, you know? So there needs to be more help in the armed forces for those serving. When you get out, like you said, it's good people who have gone through shit themselves. They're either married into the armed forces, or they have family who served in the armed forces, usually quite a few, or they served themselves, who have set these companies up, agencies up, well, hubs up, whatever you want to call them, these charities. And they're the ones that has made the massive increase in mental health awareness within the military veteran community. Whether it be somebody who's working on their own, just one person, or there's a company that has hundreds. I always find that it's the smaller companies that have the larger amount of influx of veterans coming to them. And they're the ones that do the most help, because they're the ones that really know. They really know. So we've had the big ones. Where are they now? Where's the big agencies out there? They've all reverted back. Even the Royal British Legion is disappearing. It's giving up lots of stuff. It's getting rid of lots of stuff. People are finding that there's less and less. Well, is that because they're lacking in the funds, or what? Nobody knows. You know, Help for Heroes, they've disappeared. You don't hear from them anymore.
You don't hear much of them, do you? No.
No. So it's all the other ones out there that are really the ones, soldier off the street and stuff like that. They're the ones that are really out there getting the work done, day in, day out, day in, day out. Don't get recognition, don't get, little awards and stuff like that. They're just grafting 24 hours a day helping people out. And then there's folks like us, the outsiders who are just reaching out and trying to do what we can to help the odds and sods here and there. And that's, that's us.
I mean, one thing, again, this might sound a bit fucking conceited, I suppose. But I've had feedback of people that have listened to the previous podcasts, not just mine, but other people's as well, and said that it's kind of helped them. It's made them remember things, and brought them, the thought processes have changed from what they were thinking about. They've remembered so many of the good times and stuff like that. It's helped them, and I'm not saying I'm fucking out here to do that type of thing. I'm not. It's a side effect of what I've been doing. And if one person does come on the podcast or listens to the podcast and they burden themselves or get rid of that burden, sorry, I should have said, all well and being, all be good. That's brilliant. And I hope that these podcasts are reaching people, and it is helping them, especially like what we've spoke about today. And again, some of the ones I've done in the past that are still to come out. Talk to people, seek help, even if you don't think you're bad or there's anything wrong with you. As soon as other people start seeing it in you, that's when you know, like what you said. You've got to reach out. I think.
Yeah.
This is not made me want to get in touch with someone because,
I think
hell.
there's also one other field that needs to be addressed as well for people that's either out or for people that are getting out, and it's employment. Far better employment opportunities. I just don't think there's enough going around for military personnel when they're getting out. I don't think there's enough for military veterans when they're out. I think, I'm not saying, and I'm not dishing those that are already doing it. I just feel there should be more. And I also feel that for people getting out, particularly if they joined the armed forces when they left school, and they've been in for 20 years roughly. I think they're the ones that need probably more help than others because, well, there's very much a different world from when you left school, joined the army, and the Air Force, whatever,
very.
and then get
I mean,
out
I
2
was
years
lucky.
later.
Yeah, I was lucky. I got straight into a job, and I was fine. But one of the initial ideas of this podcast was, so when I first did it, when I first set it up, it was going to be banter. It was going to be just people getting in touch with it and telling stories. We were going to call it the Battery Bar.
Yeah.
But after the first recording, it was my mate, and we sat around here doing it, and all of a sudden he'd come out with stuff, and I was just like, "Fucking, I didn't know that about you." It became apparent straight away that that's not the direction you need to
There's
go.
going to be a lot more. Yeah.
Yeah. And more and going on and recording more and recording more and recording more, and it has really not got to be. I mean, it is this. Tell us your story of your military career, and people are listening to friends that they served with, and it's been great. They remembered this, they've done that. Oh yeah, when we did this, and oh yeah, when we got into trouble for that, and stuff like this.
Yeah.
But the other part of it, the other aspect that I wanted to go into it within the podcasts was the transition between military and civilian.
Yeah.
And I don't think, I've been lucky that I had a job basically before I left the army. My last month in the army, I was already working. I was, they'd send me on gardening leave, and I'd already got a job. It was the amount of help that people get to process the change, the transition from military to civilian, and I don't think it's enough either. I don't think the resettlement
I mean,
is getting up correctly.
Absolutely not. I was given 2 choices. I would stay here and work every single day to the day you leave, and you'll be in at 6 and finish at 10. So it's 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. Or we're going to send you to Iraq or Afghanistan for the last 6 months, and then you come back, hand your kit in, and then you're gone.
Yeah.
That was the options. And I'm like, well, how many other people has that happened to? Seriously.
Yeah.
How many, for instance, people who live with their parents, but their parents are not around and they don't have any siblings. Kids who are just, they've got nobody, or even families, that they don't know where they're going to live. They don't know where because they don't get on with their families and stuff like that. There's lots of reasons. People that have addictions, how many military personnel leave with alcohol addiction? They don't think they have it, but by heck, they have it, Yeah. There was nothing. It's once you're off that conveyor belt, goodbye, you're gone. Right, next Muppet jump on the start. Let's see to you. That's kind of much it. I'll be honest. I loved the army. I absolutely loved the army. 99.9% of the people that I worked with or had met or came into contact with, I absolutely adored. Yes, you get the odd dingbat here, and he's a good backhander once in a while. Let's be honest, it happened. We all did it. Either us, we got it, or we gave it out to somebody. But in essence, I loved serving. I absolutely loved it. Did I miss it? Absolutely, I missed it. It did take me a while. It took me about 6 years before I could say, I'll never be a civvy, but I am a civvy.
Yeah.
I was asked that question, do you compare yourself to everybody else in the classroom? And I was like, at university, I was like, no. And the tutor was like, why don't you ever compare yourself to everybody else in this classroom? I said, because you're all civvies, I'm not. What, are you serving in the armed forces? No, I served. I will never be a civvy.
Yeah.
That's the mentality I'm still holding. It's been 10 years.
And it's right. It's true. I mean, as much as again, before we're doing this, doing the podcast and that, and I'll keep saying that, but my mindset was fucking forget about the military. It's gone, it's past, and stuff like that. And you shouldn't. It was a big part of your life, and you're not going to walk away from it. And there's a big community out there. The biggest regiment in the army is the veterans, because we've all still got paper up in Glasgow. There's all still a little entry on a form on a computer somewhere. That civ div, it's huge. There's fucking hundreds of thousands of people in it.
Yeah.
We're never going to get. Never going to get called up. But
millions.
We're all in the same regiment now. We're all veterans.
We're into the millions.
Yeah.
Millions of us.
The other thing that's cropped up in the podcast quite a lot, is the decompression in Cyprus. So when the guys were coming back from Afghan and places like that, they'd go through like decompression for a couple of days in Cyprus and basically go on, land there, give a couple of days, get pissed, have a fight, and get home.
Yeah.
And as much as that's a good idea, because years back we didn't get nothing like that. We just come fucking straight back,
No,
straight to work.
I came back from Iraq and I never got anything like that.
No. You know,
No.
I mean, I did 2 tours of Bosnia, 2 of Ireland, first Gulf War, Optelic, another tour of Iraq, and I never got any decompression from any of them.
I was
I didn't think I needed it, but
no, I was Kosovo 99 and then 2000. I did 2.5 years in Bosnia, and then I also did, like you said, Iraq in 2005, and we got nothing. You know, and you didn't expect it, to be honest. I never expected it.
But again, we're discussing it with people. What it's become apparent was that that decompression shouldn't have been 2 days. It should have been 5 days, a week.
Oh, definitely.
And discussing, you know, get pissed, yeah, fine, but not straight away. Or there's your beer. Now let's have a talk.
Oh, so
and people there who could say to them, you know, I mean, it's not going to help everybody. But it helps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people.
Well, first point I'll say is, like I said, I never got it and I never expected it. But the very fact that they did bring something like that out was absolutely a great idea. Now, yeah, the time scale wasn't enough. You know, they allowed people just to chill out maybe a little tiny bit. But did they chill out, or were they just getting shit faced and having a bit of a scrap? Because that's just the way things were, you know, back then, and they just felt like it. They're not going to get over any issues. Let's be honest. A lot of the stuff that people saw was quite horrendous. You know, there's a lot of horror stories out there. But you're right, it needed to be longer, but I don't think they could afford to have a whole wad of squaddies getting drunk as skunks and scrapping for a week non-stop. So how else? What else could they have done? Well, maybe they could have offered better services rather than just supplying people with drink. Who knows? Maybe a week of getting drunk on a beach where you have no contact with anybody else other than the people you're served by is what you need. You know? It should have been longer. Yes, I agree. I believe that there should have also been other services that they could have provided.
Yeah.
You know, and who knows? Maybe they are doing it now. Maybe in the future they'll do that. You know, we always have a habit of learning by our own mistakes.
Obviously, we're not serving, and I don't know what the crack is with it anymore. But you touched on something earlier that kind of I'd never even thought about it. So you said, like, you know, if you when we were serving, if you wanted to seek help, you went to see the padre or you went to see the welfare officer. I would hope that the padre is kind of qualified for that and can see, because, you know, part of their studying or whatever. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. You go see the doctor, you get a biff chit. As soon as you got a biff chit for that, there's a stigma attached to you straight away. No matter what anyone says, you know, the army's great at mental health and all that bollocks. Yeah. As soon as somebody's been signed off and they need a break, they get stigmatised. It'll affect the promotion and all sorts of shit.
Yeah.
But the other thing you touched on was about the welfare officer.
Yeah.
You know, so you get a welfare officer who goes in there, he does that job for 12 months, maybe it's 2 years. You get a warrant officer going in there, he does a course. They're not qualified.
No, they're too busy looking to see who else's wife they can shag.
Yeah.
A lot of them did do that. They're like, who's away?
Yeah.
Like, by the way, I think I'll pay a bit.
You know, they're dealing with the nightmares of the regiment of usually the wives. Qualified, you know. I mean, I kind of had an episode with it where I went to see the welfare and said, "Look, I'm fucking not doing this. I'm not doing that. This is going on. Blah blah blah." Yeah. And they were like, "Yeah, all right, fucking sit down, calm down. We'll deal with it." And fucking nothing happened.
No.
I just basically the next day at work, fucking pulled in. Right, you fucking blah, 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 given the fucking you took the Queen's shilling, you'll fucking do as you're told. And went off and done it.
Yeah.
And then, but then I was like kind of looked after by the regiment as well. I must admit, I did. They said to me, "Fucking chill out, do what we ask you, and we'll sort you out later." And I did, and they did. So that was, you know, it worked for me.
Yeah.
But I've seen where people have almost refused to soldier. because they've got issues, and they don't feel as though they're getting any help. So sometimes that's the last resort for them, or they fucking go AWOL, or
See,
whatever. They feel as they've got no one to approach.
No, I feel now that if you're going to have a welfare team, great, have the guys from the regiment who are your welfare, you have a point of contact, you can talk to them because you know them. But I feel that you should have a professional in there who's got the education and the experience and relates to the armed forces because, and I'm going to say this being honest, they should also have served themselves at one point in time. So they know what it's like to serve. They know what these guys and girls are going through. So they need to be qualified and experienced. So you've got your guys and girls from the regiment doing the welfare job, as well as somebody who's qualified and experienced and a veteran. I mean, I'm a massive one for pushing for medical professionals who are working alongside the armed forces who are veterans, because I think they would be the biggest. They would really benefit the armed forces massively because they know exactly what's going on in the head of the people that's right in front of them. They're not trying to guess what's going on, what's happened. They already know because they've been there themselves. Maybe not all, but they know the job. They know what to expect. They know the language. They know the banter. You can talk to them just as much as they're talking to you in the very same language, the very same banter as everybody else is. And the word will get across.
I mean, I suppose it's budget constraints and stuff like that, and getting stuff in place. Everything is tight. I mean, to try and get each regiment to have someone like that. I mean, you've got the Army Welfare Services as well, on top of your welfare and all that.
This would be a long-term point. Let me ask you about this then. In the next 10 years, they predict that World War III could kick off. Okay, let's go down that path just for a second. It would be the best people to recruit to work alongside regiments. It would be veterans, wouldn't it? Because they've already been there, they've seen it, they know what's going on, they know how to train. So you're going to have people like that. I'm not saying World War III is kicking off, folks. I'm just saying there seems to be the assumption that in the next 10 years, World War III could take place. Well, if that's the case, you'd want to get the military veterans to come in and work alongside regiments so that you can understand what's going to happen, so that you've got someone to fall back, because you want to get people through the services quicker. And if you want to get through the services quicker, you want military veterans who understand, who are qualified and have the experience.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I agree with you as well. Yeah. And no, folks, it's not going to be World War III.
No, there's not going to be World War III.
Not, let's give it 20 years. I'm 55 now, so at least let me get my pension.
Exactly, but Scotland is going to win the World Cup in the next 10 years.
Yeah, more likely for World War III than
that. Fair one.
Right, I think we'll end it there then, mate. It's been great talking to you. You've opened my eyes on quite a few things. Thanks for sharing your story.
No problem, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. And like I said when we first chatted, anything to help a brother out or sister, we're family, and we should all keep an eye out for each other and help each other out whenever we can.
Yeah, right. I'll stop the recording now then. 2 secs.